Watching the Energy Nerd Show is like going to grad school. And you might learn some things, but it only takes 5 minutes and it doesn't cost anything. Hey, Jeannie,
Yeah.
who's on the show today?
Today it's Sika. Remember Sika Gadzanku?
Oh, cool.
Sika was one of the very first interns at Climbable.
Yeah, she was great.
And then she worked at Synapse too. So
Where is she now?
she's in Colorado working at NREL.
Let's see what she has to say.
Welcome to another Energy Nerd Show and Tell. Today our guest is Sika Gadzanku, who is working at NREL. Hi, Sika.
Hey, Jeannie and Bruce. Nice to see your faces.
Good to see you again.
Good to see you. It's been a while. It's been a long time.
We're just really excited to see you now that you're out in Colorado and have a chance to hear about what you've been working on. I think you sent a graph on ahead that we've just had a few minutes to look at. Can you tell us about that graph?
Yeah, so the graph was produced by the World Bank and Ceres. It's the Solar Energy Research Institute of Singapore, I believe. And it just showcases the global installation of floating solar photovoltaics over the last 7-8 years or so. And the graph just kind of shows that, what started in pretty small quantities has grown quite rapidly in the last decade. Maybe not as much in the US, but what this graph shows is that there's a lot of interest in this solar technology, and there is a need for further research about the benefits, the underlying technology, and kind of how to assess its value. Because we look at, the solar technology broadly, and we see that we've seen that kind of steep deployment of the technology, but this is a subset of the technology that is gaining a lot of traction, especially in Asia. So I think it's a pretty cool figure. That's what's occupying my mind these days. So I thought I could share it with others who might also find it interesting.
Yeah, it looks like we've got almost 2,000 megawatts of floating solar. Can you describe where are those projects, and is it lots of little projects or a handful of big ones?
Most of these projects are in Asia. I think the 5 leading deployers are China, Japan, South Korea. Yeah, those 3. In the beginning, most of those were very little projects, like pilot demonstration projects. But in the last few years, we're seeing in 50 to 100 megawatt and higher size projects.
What do the costs look like, and how do they differ from land-based solar projects?
There hasn't been as much kind of comprehensive data on the cost, but it is slightly more expensive than land-based projects. And the reason why it's gained so much traction in parts of Asia is that they have competing land uses. So in some countries, land is really expensive. And so when you consider the cost of land, then it makes costs comparable with land-based PV systems. But we just don't have enough data from utility scale plants to really put forth a number. This is the LCOE for FPV systems. So we are seeing some initial demonstration projects for hybrid, FPV hydro systems, for instance. And so there you're able to kind of take advantage of already existing infrastructure from the hydro dam and kind of just site the FPV system on a reservoir. And then in some countries in Southeast Asia, especially, that have very dry seasons, the hope is that FPV could help kind of bridge the gap when you have a dip in hydro output. Very few number of projects interested at the offshore FPV side, but to my knowledge, they're not really pulling from the offshore wind industry.
Yeah, salt water and ocean waves and storms can be tough.
Exactly. And I think there, even the inland installations, some sites have had difficulty with waves, and some countries have typhoons. And so there's just really a lot of research going on now on how to design the FPV system to withstand, severe waves and just other disturbances to the system.
Are there forecasts or, guesses that you're aware of further development over the next few years or out over the longer term for floating solar?
Green Tech Media has done some projections out to 2024, and they project about a 20% year-on-year growth in FPV installations. So yeah, the kind of industry is growing at a really fast pace. The question now is how can we design policies to kind of enable increased deployment of these technologies? The leaders in installations, they've done more feed-in tariffs, but as the technology matures and as you just have more players interested in entering the market, there needs to be more structure in kind of how do we design policies to encourage deployment of the technology.
What's the most interesting thing, or is there something that you're excited about when you think about floating solar?
For me, the exciting thing is that there have been, studies looking at technical potential in the US, and it's not as attractive because even though you have some regions with very expensive land, and NRL studies showed that you could meet about 10% of the US's electricity demand with floating solar installations, even under conservative assumptions. The interesting to me is that in other parts of the world that have a confluence of energy, water, food challenges that they're facing, FPV can become a really attractive option. So kind of just realizing that different contexts require different solutions when we're trying to decarbonize the power sector. Here, it's been a lot of land-based, PV, offshore wind, and onshore wind. But in other places, especially in regions like Sub-Saharan Africa and Southeast Asia that have a lot of hydro dams and a lot of open reservoirs, floating solar is really attractive.
Are there any issues around interactions with wildlife, like worries about fish or aquatic plants and things like that?
So that's actually quite a big unknown with these systems and a huge area that needs more research. NRL recently kind of is finishing up some work on really verifying which of the co-benefits of FPV have actually been proven and remain unproven. Because if you read a lot of articles about floating PV, one of the benefits would be like it doesn't really interact with wildlife or impacts in the ecosystem might be low, but that still remains hugely unknown. For us, in releasing all the different reports that we do, we're hoping that it can encourage more research into this topic, but it remains unknown. The whole, impacts on ecosystem and then water quality impacts have not been studied in as much detail as we need.
Well, it's great. It's great to have a big list of low carbon or zero carbon energy generation, right?
Yes, for sure. In some countries in Southeast Asia, they have very ambitious renewable energy targets, and they also have some island nations, so they don't even have the land. They just have ambitious targets, and they're trying to decarbonize. So any and everything that can help them meet those goals is important. There was a webinar last week hosted by, I think it's the International Solar Energy Society. About 500 people tuned in to learn about FPV. So there's a lot of interest internationally. Thanks for having me on, guys. This was really fun.
Thanks, Sika.
Thanks for being here. Good to see you.
Good to see you. Bye.
Thanks for watching. This is Energy Nerd Show and Tell.
It's the show that we want to watch, so we're thinking maybe some of you energy nerds want to watch it too. If you do, then tell your friends and subscribe right around here. Click there.
And check
or there or over here.
Instagram and Twitter and Facebook and YouTube and where else?
Yeah, and the Energy Nerd website at energynerdshow.com. You can always go there. And if you want to be a guest, you can volunteer to be a guest. We love to have guests. In fact, that's kind of what the show is all about.
Absolutely.